This is your host Swapnil Bhartiya, and welcome to another episode of TFiR Let's Talk. And today we have with us Manik Sidana, Principal Architect at Coredge. Manik, it's great to have you on the show.
Great to be with you, Swapnil.
So let's talk about the overall what kind of operations typically happen for Kubernetes cluster. Let's just start from day zero all the way to day two and beyond. So please tell me.
Let me set some perspective around, what kind of life cycle a typical Kubernetes cluster goes through during its life cycle, right? So before jumping on to day two, let's, have that perspective set first. So, in that context, day zero refers to the phase instead of just a day, wherein you have a Kubernetes cluster which you've just got deployed. So day zero is the day or the phase when you get a Kubernetes cluster from a build team or a deployment team, and it is handed over to the ops team. Now the cluster that is coming your way, it would have got deployed through a lot of automation pipelines, a couple of different set of automations running on it. It could involve some kind of tuning over the default Kubernetes configuration. It could have certain OS patches on top of the nodes, right? And again, as you move on to specific use cases, in case of, let's say, telcos, where they need a lot of network acceleration features, so you need advanced configurations like huge pages, DPDK, SRIOV interfaces. So before rolling out the cluster further or moving to day two operations, the first or the very initial and important step is to validate the cluster, right? So as you get the cluster on the day zero, that is the phase where you validate the cluster and you ensure that the target workloads that are supposed to be running on this cluster, whether you have everything ready for the applications to consume from this cluster. So in case of, let's say, 5G or vRAN applications, this could be advanced features like huge pages. In case of enterprise applications, it could be integration of the cluster with some kind of object storage or block storage. And then it could also mean you use a specific CNI plugin for running your enterprise applications. So for us, we consider day zero as the validation phase, where you certify the cluster and make sure that the workloads that are coming onto the cluster, they have everything. You have everything ready on the cluster from the perspective of the application consumption, right? So once you have the day zero, right, successful day zero, where you have validated, then comes the day one phase of the cluster, where you would typically do the adequate tooling in your cluster, like setting up certain monitoring stacks, uh, configuring the log collection and tracking of various metrics. In addition, you would also want to have certain kind of policy management, right? So again, when we talk about policies in terms of Kubernetes, so it's one of another uh, kind of day one operation, where you would define policies that which could be network policies, enabling the communication between the pods and services, and ensuring that the applications are isolated from each other. There could be policies related to how you would want to store your backups, how frequent you want to take your backups, how do you want to do the backup scheduling. Then again, you would also not uh, go ahead and roll out applications, because there are certain compliance and governance that is associated with the cluster. So these may change depending on the geographical area where the cluster is. So that's another kind of policy that you would like to have on your cluster on day one. So when you have hundreds of clusters, right, maintaining policies, rolling them out, updating policies, and then rolling them out again, so that becomes that also consumes us a lot of operational bandwidth. So that's another operation day one operation, basically typically to ensure that you have the clusters, uh, you have everything rolled out to ensure compliance and governance. And then once you have these, then after that you enter the day two phase of the cluster, wherein the actual application rollouts, the application upgrades, cluster upgrades, so those, then the actual operation starts. So when you enter day two, you will also have to take care of upgrading your clusters, right? And in case of Kubernetes, the upgrade part is the most painful part, because there are a lot of components that people install on top of Kubernetes, and they have very strict dependency on Kubernetes versions. So it becomes a very tricky operational challenge for upgrading the clusters. And you have live applications running in production, and you have to upgrade the clusters also. So I think these are some of the uh, day zero, day one, and day two Kubernetes operations.
Talk a bit about what kind of challenges are there which comes to running and of course managing these operations.
One of the pain points that people face is due to the lack or the absence of proper security, because when you have multiple clusters, maintaining security by providing adequate roles and access and RBAC to the users of the clusters, because when you have a cluster, there are various entities that are going to interact with it. So there'll be a cluster admin who will have full rights, right? Because he is the one who's managing the cluster, so he needs to have a full access to each and every operation. Then you have application owners that come up to the cluster, and they should not have a lot of privileges. They should only have sufficient privileges so that they can run their applications and not hamper other namespaces or cause disruptions in the clusters. Then there would be some SREs that are coming on, who would be fixing production issues on the clusters. So I think having a right security model is very important when you are managing a cluster. So this because that's where if you give wrong access to someone, and it may lead to a lot of problems, right, when they execute an operation incorrectly. Because you can execute a wrong command, it's just a matter of hitting enter, and in 1 second you can lose all your data.
In addition to of course permission authentication security, are there other challenges also that are some of the pain points that developers or DevOps teams face?
I think one of the other challenge, I would say, it's not a kind of operational challenge, but it's a challenge related to the skills. So there was this CNCF survey some time back, in which a lot of organizations filled in the survey, and in that survey, 55% of the respondents said that they are facing problems because they don't have in-house skills, or they're not able to hire the right talent. Because when it comes to Kubernetes, it is changing very fast, right? Every 3 months or 4 months you have a new release. And similarly, the CNCF landscape is also huge. There are a lot of open source projects in CNCF, outside of CNCF. And people are embracing open source tools, and they are installing them, they are using them. And it's a wide plethora of these tools, and it's very hard to find people who know how to use the right tool in the right way. So that's, I think, another challenge. It's a good thing that you have a lot of open source projects, but at the same time, it's a challenge to find the people who know how to use it.
Now, when you talk about a skill problem, that is a problem across the industry because there are not that many people who are skilled in all these technologies. Can you also talk a bit about also because of this not only skill gap but the complexity of Kubernetes? There's a booming ecosystem where a lot of players are coming in to help companies who want to embrace Kubernetes. Talk a bit about what do you see, how many of these problems have been kind of solved in a way without compromising on Kubernetes itself. Because what happens is that sometimes you can bring a very opinionated solution. So what happens is that you lose the flexibility, that the very reason you move to Kubernetes. So talk a bit about what are you seeing in the market there.
Kubernetes, I think, it's a very good, I would say, an orchestration platform which ensures that, when an application is down, it brings it up, it reconciles the application. But just having Kubernetes will not solve anything, because you need layers of management on top of Kubernetes. Right, so inherently, if I talk about Kubernetes, right, it doesn't provide anything on the tenancy aspect. So inherently, you cannot manage multiple tenants on Kubernetes. You can do it via namespaces, but there's not something inherent to Kubernetes. You'll have to write your management layer. You have to uh, write something on your own to offer that. There are projects like coming up, and there are special interest groups also in Kubernetes who are working on multi-tenancy. But again, these are all whenever any company launches their own Kubernetes platform, they have their own way of solving it. So there is no right way of doing it, because it's all, as you said, opinionated, right? I every organization, whatever they bring in, it is limited to the use cases or the problems they see. But we don't have anything which solves a wider problem, right? So maybe I think open source will have some answer for that, because that is where everyone comes together to find a solution for the most common problems that are there.
Kubernetes is moving into production. By now a lot of companies are moving there, but there are still a lot of greenfield, where folks are still evaluating. If I ask you, what would be the right approach when a company starts to embrace Kubernetes? And because today everybody like, hey, we should be on the Kubernetes bandwagon without even realizing whether they need it or not, right? Sometimes they're like, hey, everybody's on Kubernetes, everybody's on container, everybody's doing cloud. There are a lot of jokes also there that just put everything on the cloud. So if I ask you, what is the right approach to bring Kubernetes into your environment ecosystem, what would that be?
I think the right approach would be, first would be that, see, at the end of the day, you have to run some applications, right? Whether it runs on Kubernetes or it runs on, some public cloud or private cloud. At the end of the day, it's about the applications and nothing else. These are just the platform, right? So I think the first, moving towards Kubernetes should be a well thought of decision, in the sense that, first you need to evaluate whether the application workloads that you have, whether in how much time you can containerize them. Because you can, right, you can run VMs on top of Kubernetes, but that is not happening in a good way as of now, because there is a project called KubeVirt, but it's not that stable, right? So first you have to see what is the nature of your application, and what are the needs of the application, right? If you and what do you need from the underlying platform. So once these things are carefully thought of, then I think a decision should be made. It's not that everyone is doing moving to Kubernetes, so okay, we'll also jump it. Whether you need it or not, what are your scaling requirements, what are your requirements of auto healing. So you need to consider all those aspects, and see if there is something missing in your current approach, and whether Kubernetes is able to fill it or not. So this should be done in this manner. And also there's a you should move by doing POCs first, establish them in your labs, see what is the performance, right, of your application, whether it is still able to take that much load or not, and then I think carefully plan your move towards Kubernetes.
When it does come to that you said you have to set up POCs and stuff like that, there are two ways. First of all, you can go, because almost every project is open source project in CNCF landscape, and then there are also commercial vendors. So the big question becomes build versus buy as well. So once again, what is your advice, that folks, but the challenge is that when you are going to build yourself, that means you do need to have technical special skill set there. And when we do look at we can talk about the whole landscape about observability is there. Well, so many tools, open source solutions, security is another. So you service mesh, you will get overwhelmed very quickly. And we are talking to a lot of companies, and this is what is happening is that they wanted to, as you said, they were trying to solve a business problem, but when they get into the Kubernetes world, they ended up seeing that, hey, we are doing all these things just for that one thing. And this is, draining not only on the resources but also on dollars as well. So once again, talk a bit about, once again, what is the right approach of build versus buy, where they don't get overwhelmed with, doing so many things, because that's when the mistakes also happen, and sometimes security becomes, an afterthought, or sits on the back burner, and then things like Uber happens.
I think a lot of organizations today, they are using a kind of a hybrid approach where they are putting their production workloads on public Kubernetes providers like EKS or GKE, because that gives them a lot of elasticity, right? So when they have a peak load coming up, right, let's say you are an e-commerce application and you expect that during Christmas season there'll be a lot of load, so you need infra, right? And so that is the time where you see a peak load on your infrastructure. And in these cases, you can opt for your opt for these AWS or EKS, the public providers, because you can scale on demand, right? And if you buy your own hardware, then you cannot that's a cost, right? Because you cannot reserve so much hardware just for 1 month of the peak load. So it's a kind of balanced approach. So I think for starters, I think it's good that you keep your production workloads on EKS or AWS, and run your in-house dev or QA environments on your own managed infra, right? If you have your own nodes, you can set up your, because that will also help organization judge the cost trade-offs, and they would also learn, get to know practically that what are the cost implications, and are they paying too much to the public cloud providers, that they can going forward plan for running even the production workloads on the self-managed infra. So yeah, I mean, that is something that has to be evaluated. And again, I think the cost benefits will definitely be huge. So but again, at the same time, you'll have to take care of the operational complexity. If you're managing your own Kubernetes infra, then it becomes your headache and your job to upgrade it, apply patches. In case of public providers, you don't have to worry about that. So it's a something again on this side and loss on the other. So it's a mixed match.
You talked about hybrid cloud, but we kind of also live in a multi-cloud world where, depending on, sometime, company gets acquired and they were on a different cloud. But the reality is, companies do lean towards multi-cloud, where they leverage different services, or because of the region, or whatever reason, they can be on AKS, or So talk a bit about, once again, this the complexity challenges, or when they should also either consider or also look at multi-cloud. Multi-cloud doesn't mean running the same workload in different clouds. It's about, appropriate workload in appropriate cloud.
So I think today, uh, there are a lot of compliance requirements also, right? So let's say you are running an e-commerce app, right? And or maybe something else, right? And you want to serve European customers. So in that case, they would require some kind of a GDPR compliance. So if you have your clusters or your workloads in the US area, you will not be able to serve the European customers because of the compliance, right? So that's one aspect where people are moving towards multi-cluster or multi-cloud to handle compliance issues. Then there are other use cases where you don't want your application to have a lot of latency, right? So if even if I have a web application running, I will not serve my customers in Europe with from a data center in India. So it again spoils the user experience. And today I think user experience is one of the most important aspect. It can make or break your product, because if users don't like it, they feel they get too much of latency, nobody will use it. So I think there are a lot of use cases, today, due to which it is a requirement to go multi-cloud or multi-region or multi-cluster, whatever you may call it.
Last question before we wrap this up. First of all, I love this discussion there. This is like, once again, the folks who are, considering Kubernetes, and when they are looking at either the project or the providers, it could be cloud provider, and there are a lot of, because cloud in today's world is not a magical place. Just because you move to AWS or GCP or Azure doesn't mean all your problems are gone. They do manage a lot of things, but you still have to do a lot of things on your own as well. So can you also talk about, when, these folks, they consider, what are some of the key features that, people, they should like, hey, these are the must in any platform when they plan to manage Kubernetes operations? What are the key points that they were like, hey, these are the check marks that this platform has ticked, so this is okay for us?
I think the first and the most important is how the platform is handling security, right? Does it offers zero trust security? Zero trust security means, you never trust, you always verify. So I think that is one of the important key feature, that the platform should offer zero trust security, and it should allow the users coming in. It should allow a lot of customizations in the roles or the RBAC access, so that the one who's managing the access can set granular level access for different users depending on their needs. So I should not be forced by the platform that I want to give you access to 5 things, but I end up giving you access to 10 different resources. So the platform should not force me. Instead, it should give me that freedom and flexibility, right? Because again, security is going to I mean, if it's not configured right, it's big problem. The second thing I think any platform should offer is, it should offer a good centralized management, where you get complete visibility of all your clouds, all your cluster from a single pane of glass. You should be able to see what is your inventory, right? How many VMs or how many clusters or pods you have across all your different clusters or clouds. So unless you have visibility of your resources, you will not be able to plan better whenever a new application or new demand comes, because if you don't have that visibility, it becomes difficult to plan. uh, and then I think the most important aspect is that just having Kubernetes and clouds and maintaining the infra is not the thing. At the end, you have to run workloads, right? So the platform that you have, it should offer good, it should have a seamless app delivery mechanism, so that you can seamlessly roll out applications across different clusters or clouds. And you can also simultaneously handle the application lifecycle management, because it's not that application rollout is not a one time thing, because there'll be updates to the applications, there'll be upgrades, patches. So if a platform should offer easy and seamless lifecycle management.
Manik, thank you so much for taking time out today and give a very comprehensive kind of your insights into from day zero all the way to day two operation, and also share your insights on what companies should. It kind of, you shared a playbook, right, for Kubernetes getting started there. So thanks for those insights, and I would love to have you back on the show. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Swapnil. It was nice talking to you. Thank you.